Frank's most recent project is development of a living history presentation of Dr. Benjamin Franklin, who wrote, "If you would not be forgotten, as soon as you're dead and rotten, either do things worth the writing or write things worth the reading. In my life and work, I try to do both and encourage others to do the same." With that said, I'd like to introduce the man to you whose wisdom, character, and knowledge will never be forgotten. We're in for a real treat, Mr. Frank Watson as Benjamin Franklin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benjamin Franklin, at your service. May I put my hat here with you, sir?
Sure.
Now, as most of you may know from your history books, I'm not a strong public speaker. So for us to be successful, you'll have to be strong listeners. So if you'll work with me here, we will accomplish great things today. I assure you that with your help, I can keep learning. And learning is what we want to talk about. The discussion today is learning, lightning, and liberty. And I'm going to draw a connection between those three things. I'm going to do something else, though. I'm going to get to know a few of you and ask a few of you to just share a little bit about yourselves in the process of doing this, okay? So be ready. If I call on you, if you feel uncomfortable, just go like that, and it's okay. I'll go on to someone that's more, prepared to go, sure, why not? Now, I was born in 1706. And do we have any math students here that can tell how many years ago was that? Hey. Well, while you're figuring that out, we'll go on. I had 16 brothers and sisters. My father's first wife had passed, and he had married again, and together at the dinner table, I remember at one time 13 of us around the dinner table. Now that's quite a group, isn't it? Anybody from a large family here? How many have a family of 4 or more? Okay, how about 7 or more? 7? Okay. You're a rarity. Anybody else with 7 or more? Okay. Why is this important? Well, for me, I came from a family that loved to read. Why did they love to read? Our whole state loved to read. Boston and the state of Massachusetts, we read because we thought it was important to read the Bible. Now, we don't talk about the Bible much these days, especially in public buildings. But I assure you that if you want to learn history, you can't ignore it. It's there, like a great big pink elephant in the room, okay? Let's don't think about pink elephants. Let's think about why it was important to read the Bible. People fought wars over the Bible. We didn't want somebody just telling us what was in it. We wanted to know. We wanted to be able to read it. There was a time when it was against the law in England to have a Bible and read it in the house. And what my family would do, we had a little stool, and we would turn that stool over, and we would fix the Bible underneath the bottom of the stool. And when we got ready to read the Bible, we would gather around, we'd turn the stool over and read the Bible. And if someone said, "Psst, somebody's coming," we'd turn the stool over and everybody was cool. That's a word I picked up on the way here today. Now, this country, at its founding, had the most educated group of people in the law and in classical studies that we have ever had. When Edmund Burke was addressing the Parliament during the Revolution, preparatory to the Revolution, he said, "Gentlemen, you don't understand. The London booksellers tell me that they sell more books in the classics and in the law in the colonies than they do in all of England." This was not some group of riffraff to be taken lightly. These were people that studied. But I didn't come from a wealthy family. My father worked with tallow. Do you know anybody know what tallow is? Tallow? Yes, sir.
Beef fat.
Beef fat. And my, did that stink when you melted it. It just, I still remember the smell. I didn't like the smell of tallow, but we all worked with it. And there was no safety regulations at the time. Actually, I lost a brother in the beef tallow. It was a tragedy, and tragedies do happen. But we didn't have a lot of money. But what we did have was a strong family tradition of learning and working hard. Now, my family in England were blacksmiths, and the oldest son always took the blacksmith shop. And then others would be apprenticed. Now, today, when you go to school, you start in kindergarten or first grade, and then you go up through school, and then you graduate, and then you go looking for a job. That's not the only way to do things, and for some people, it's not the best way. Some people do better to learn by doing. Now, we learned a lot by doing. We worked, but we also played. Now, how many know that I like to swim? Yes, I taught myself to swim at a very early age, and then I improved on it by reading a book about swimming. Have you ever learned something from a book and then tried it? Who has done that? Anybody done that here? Read a book? You, sir?
Yeah.
What did you learn?
Well, I'm an electrical engineer, and I read a lot of books about how to do things. That was how books was a primary thing for the education for an engineer.
An electrical engineer. Sir, you have touched on a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And that is what we're coming to, but we're coming to it slowly, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is this. If you remember nothing else, you young people that are here, please, please keep this in your mind, okay? The thing that is going to make the greatest difference in your education is your desire to learn. It's not going to be your teacher. It's not going to be your mother or father, although those people are very important. They are extremely important. It's not going to be this book or that book. Somewhere in your life, you have to become inspired by a strong desire to know. And my generation had that desire. Now, I wanted to know how to swim. That was very important. And I got curious about other things. I like to play. I liked games. Anybody here like games? Oh, let's have some fun. What kind of games do you like?
Sports.
Sports. Name a sport.
Basketball.
Basketball. Over here. Yeah, what about you?
I don't know, chess, I guess.
Chess. That was my favorite game. You can learn so much about life from chess. What about back over here? Card games. Yes, we played a lot of card games, and you can learn to count and keep track of things so well. Anybody play any of these modern games? I never tried those, but I hear there's some games that really have a lot to do with electricity. Yes, electricity, going back to that. Well, one of the things I did was I learned to pay attention. Now, this word, I don't want to go whizzing by it. Let's take a moment with it. Attention, to attend to something. Okay? If I'm attending to something, I'm attending to this chair. I'm focusing on this chair. If I'm attending to my business, I'm focusing on my business. To pay attention is to give your time in a very whole way to something. Now, is there anything more important in our lives than our time? Think about this. The Bible gives, 70 years. Some of us live more, some of us live less. But we have a certain amount of time. We might make, in that amount of time, enough money to, in the first 20 years of working, that we could fish in the rest of that time. You know? Do you like fish? All right. I'd like fish too, especially cod. There is nothing more important than our time. I am so honored to have you spending this time with me. And I am honored by the presence of you, sir, who have lived and seen the world, and you choose to spend a little of your time here with me. That's an honor. And you, young people, to spend time with me, that is a signal honor. That is a striking honor. Why is that important to me? I spent a good part of my life fighting to establish this country. I love this country. When my own son turned against this country, we separated and went different ways. This country stands for freedom. It stands for people doing the right thing. And you, young people, are the ones who will decide how to carry that forward in your generation. And I give you my respect. I hope that you will take that job seriously. I will do everything I can to inspire you to do so. But the first thing that I want you to know is how very much I appreciate your presence here. And we're going to cover a few things here, and I'm going to answer questions at the end of what we have to say. This connection between learning, enlightening, and liberty. I learned from books. I don't remember when I could not read. And with all those brothers and sisters to help me in a family that had a strong intellectual tradition and the ability to read, I had what you might call an enriched environment. All schooling begins at home. My learning began with my mother, who was a very bright lady. And here is something for you to remember when you have children of your own. When those children come into the world, you as parents will be the first to feed them, and you will be the first to love them. And the connection between food and love will stay with them for the rest of their lives. The other things that you surround them with, they will cherish. If you surround them with the kind of television or bad books or wasted time, that's what they will cherish. If you make certain that they're surrounded with opportunities to learn, to read good things, to see good things, they will cherish goodness. So they will cherish it in a very special way because they will connect it with mom and dad, and especially with mom. So brothers and sisters come into that too. It's important how you act as a brother or a sister. Take a little time. Knowing how to read. My father thought, maybe I'll put him in the ministry. So I got a little bit of the Latin school. Not much though, because after I started, my father thought about it and he thought, I've never seen a preacher that made much money. And then he thought, I don't have much money, and if I'm, I've got other responsibilities, I don't think I can do this. So the next step for me, I went to a common school for a short time. But Mr. Brownell was not a common teacher. He was a very good teacher. And I took advantage of every second with that teacher. And if you do that, when you find a good teacher, don't waste his time or her time and your time. Take advantage of it. Learn, because you never know what's going to happen from what you learn. For me, from what I learned, and went outside, I read, and I thought, and I went outside, and I looked at the world in a special way. You know about the story with me and the kite, I assume. And the lightning and the key. But that was not the first experience I had with a kite. I went swimming. I had a kite, and I was flying a kite, and I looked at the kite, and the wind was pulling on the kite. And I looked at my friend that was with me and I said, "Would you bring my clothes around to the other side of this pond?" And he was very helpful. He took my clothes and he didn't run off with them. I appreciated that. And I got in the water and I held on to that kite and it pulled me across the stream. Now, you've probably noticed things like that. When you notice something like that, give yourself credit. You have done something, you have directly observed something. If what you observe doesn't always match with what you've been taught, you have an opportunity. I've finished my schooling very young, and I became an apprentice to my brother in the printing trade. And I'm going to make a long story short. I was good. I was really good. I was smart as well as smart aleck. I was a smart aleck. My brother had some friends and they liked to tweak the government and write articles that were funny and would sell papers. But he didn't want me to get too uppity because I was an apprentice. So I secretly wrote some letters and slid them under the door at night, and they were so good that he printed them. Well, when he found out about that, he wasn't happy at all. I made some mistakes. Okay, I ran away from home. I ran away from my brother. My brother beat me. Now, this was not uncommon. That's what you did at the time. If you wanted to discipline someone, you beat them. That's how it was. It's different now, hopefully for most of us. But I was a young man, strong, smart. I knew the printing trade. I quickly got work. I made money, and I spent money. And I made friends, and some of those friends weren't very good friends. Some of them led me into difficulties. They borrowed money from me and didn't pay it back. I ended up going to England and learning more about printing. But I realized when I was over there, here I am, I'm working, but I don't have anything to show for it. Now, something that's important to remember, and something I feel that made me special, is I was able to look at what I was doing and say, you know what? I'm making mistakes here. Not only did I change what I was doing, I devised a way of changing the important habits of my life. They're called Ben Franklin's 13 Virtues. And I became one of the first who systematically chose to improve his own life. Today, you've had many people who do that. They're motivational speakers, how to win friends and influence people. Many folks followed that, but I was one of the first, if not the first. I went into business for myself. I worked hard, and I let people see me working hard. And I became successful. I married a woman who was hardworking, a really good businesswoman. And you know what? I give Deborah Franklin credit. She really helped me be who I was. Her ability to take care of business helped me become wealthy in the printing business. We franchised our printing businesses. We financed young printers who would go out and start their own business and then pay us back over time with interest. Eventually, I could retire and spend all my time doing what I really like to do: science, experiments, and boy did I have fun. We played with electricity. We had a big thing that we turned, and you know what static electricity is? You know, when you do your feet like that and you reach out and you touch someone and it goes pop like that? Well, we managed to generate a lot of it, and we saved it up in a leaden jar, a battery. And we would get people holding hands in a big circle, and we would put that electric on someone at the beginning of the circle, and you'd see them jump all the way down. It was fun. Oh, we did, and we found out that if we got enough of it, we could kill a chicken. That was considered an okay thing to do. And then we decided, well, let's go for a turkey. So we got a big turkey. And we got the thing going, and we got the electricity generated, and I got excited, and I forgot what I was doing, and I touched the thing, and it knocked me completely unconscious. We just about killed the biggest turkey in the room, I guess. I developed what was called the single fluid theory of electricity. And this single fluid theory suggested that static electricity and lightning were the same thing. Now, everybody says, let me explain to you just how important that was. Let's say your house catches fire, okay? And the firemen come, and the house is burning, and they simply make sure that the fire doesn't spread. They don't try to put out the fire. How do you feel?
I'd be upset about it.
At that time in history, what we all believed was that it was not right to put out the fire in the house that got struck by lightning. Why did we believe that? Does anybody know? Say it louder.
God's will.
It was God's will. God decided, your house today, boom! You did something wrong. You must have sinned because your house was struck by lightning and burnt, and we're not going to mess with God. After we proved that electricity was lightning and static electricity, that they were one and the same, we understood that electricity and lightning were both natural things. It was not a random or purposeful act of God. It was okay to put out the fire. Now, needless to say, a lot of people whose houses were struck by lightning found this very useful information. I became the most famous American in the world from this single discovery. All my years of reading, and I spent my time reading. I love to read. I had a passion for learning. When I walked outside, I would look to see what was going on. And if the wind was blowing and pulling a kite, I was measuring, it will pull me across the pond. This connection that made me so famous gave me an idea for a very useful invention. That invention was known as the lightning rod. When you take a pointed object of metal and put it on top of the building, and then take metal down and around the house or the ship to a ground, the lightning will follow that path rather than go through the building, causing fires or electrocuting people. And then I did something entirely keeping with my belief that there was a God. I believed that there was a God, and that the thing that we could do most to thank Him for our gifts was to be kind to our fellow people. I invented this, and instead of putting a patent on it, I let it be made and reproduced without any patent, thereby speeding the process of adopting it. It's still in use today, and it's difficult to say how many lives have been saved over the years. This really made me famous. Well, while all this was taking place, our country had decided that we were going to become independent. The reading that we had done of classical Greece and Rome, and the thinking of people like a fellow by the name of Montesquieu about how politics should be organized, convinced us that we should not have a king, that we should be ruled by ourselves. The trouble was, England had the most powerful army and navy in the world. Now, how many of you have ever faced a bully? Someone that was bigger and stronger and meaner? How about you, young man? Have you ever looked at somebody and said, "Oh, I better just get out of his way"? Yeah, me too. But we couldn't do that because there was no place to go. England ruled us and was starting to tax us. We were not treated as British subjects. We were treated as a subject people. And for hundreds of years by this time, we had considered ourselves free British subjects. And now we find we're not. Excuse me. We declared independence. And when we declared independence, we didn't have any credit or any money. We had an army in rags that marched barefoot through the snow. And they called on me and said, "You know what? You're pretty famous. Maybe if you go to France and ask for help, you can get us some help." Well, I did. While I was in Canada, I bought a hat with fur around the edge of it, and I had a little skin condition on my head. I wore that hat a lot to kind of keep my head covered up, keep warm too. When I arrived in France to seek the help of the French government, it was popular to talk about the natural man. And there I came from America, and everyone considered us kind of rustic or semi-savage, you know, those people over in America living in the bushes and throwing rocks at things to fix dinner. We had cities, we had governments, we had, you know, a civilized life. But when the French decided that I was a natural man I am, thank you very much. I wore my hat, it became the fashion. I was paying what? What's that word again? Attention. I was paying attention to what was going on around me. I was learning. You know, John Adams, God bless his soul. I love John Adams, but sometimes he was mad, absolutely mad. He got the French language right, but he always insisted on showing up to dinner on time. You couldn't do that in France. You started dinner, you arrived late, everything, all the nobility had parties. They go to the opera, they go to plays. I'm the guy that wrote early to bed and early to wise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I spent a lot of my life on a vegetarian diet. I knew the value of exercise. I knew the value of aerobic exercise. I lifted weights, I swam. And when I got to France, I changed everything I did. Why? Because my country was at stake. And you know what? The people in France embraced me, embraced our country, and together we convinced the king to give us money, arms, ammunition, and the French Army and Navy to help us win the fight. So, we start out with a boy and a poor family, but a family that supports each other and is always looking to improve their lives. I learned to read. I learned to pay attention to what was going on around me. I became educated partly with the help of the Latin school, partly with the help of Mr. Brownell, but a lot of my schooling was home schooling. I went into business. I worked hard. I was fortunate. I was blessed. I made enough money through doing what I was supposed to do, using what I had learned to make money and save it. I studied science, more learning. I made a great discovery. I went to France and I learned about the French. The lightning, the discovery of lightning was a key turning point that made me famous. And it all turned on my ability to learn. And it kept right on with that. Our country became free. I came home from France and became president of Pennsylvania. If anybody asks you what president I was, ask them, president of Pennsylvania? Because I was never president of the United States. And I was there for the Constitutional Convention. I was there to see our Constitution put together and approved. And my final words to the Constitutional Convention were on the order of, and there was not agreement on this. We needed a strong central government. We also needed a balance where the states had freedom. But I said, I'm not sure this is the best we can do, and I'm not sure it's not. But I've learned over time that sometimes I make mistakes. Can we all today agree that we're not perfect and accept this document and confound our enemies? Because we had people, we had won the war, but we were losing the freedom because we were not strong enough to keep it. That was the last major accomplishment that I was involved in. That establishment of the Constitution of the United States of America That Constitution still stands, still protects us, and whether it will do so, I'm an old man now, whether it will do so in the next 70 years, in the next 100 years, a great deal of that is going to depend on you. So I am so honored that you are here. I hope that I've given you cause to pay attention, to learn, and to do your very best for this country which so many fought and died for. Dr. Benjamin Franklin, at your service. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If anyone would like to get their picture taken with an old man, I am most happy to do so. If anyone has questions, I would be happy to answer. And you know what? I always find out something new about myself when we do something like this, because so many people know about my life. Yes, sir.
Poor Richard's Almanac. Who was Richard?
Richard, sir, I must confess, was Dr. Benjamin Franklin. And at the time that the almanac was written, most homes had two bits of written material in them. One was a Bible, and one was an almanac. And I determined that the Bible was already written, but I might be able to pass some wisdom on in the almanac. I did that deliberately to help people get the information so that they could become successful in life and not just work hard and die poor. The wisdom taken from that is put together in a book called The Way to Wealth, and the advice is just as good today as when it was written. More questions? Pictures? Yes, sir.
You are frequently referred to as Dr. Franklin. What's the doctor signify?
Sir, I was given my first honorary doctorate by the College of William and Mary, and it was because of my accomplishments in science. So the doctorate was honorary. It was because I did the work and not just the study and got the degree. However, I want to say this. As someone who has been in the school of life, I would not go to just anyone for brain surgery. I prefer some people to have their certificate. However, there are all ways to learn, and if you can come up with the goods, you can get the paper. I had another doctorate accorded later in Scotland. Yes, sir. Did we have another question? Yes, sir.
What age did you retire?
I was about 40 when I retired from the printing business. Quite young. And, you know, some things, everyone has a different path in life, okay? It's important to learn one thing really early if you want to be free. Learn how to save money. There are people who make millions of dollars who are deeply indebted. But how many of you have ever heard of a poor housekeeper or laboring person who died and left a fortune to a charity that they believed in? It happens. What makes the difference? We can all find ways to spend money, and do. But finding ways to save money is the key to freedom. If you want to be free, if you would like to retire when you're 40, start saving money today. If you're walking out the door and you see a soft drink that you normally would spend $1 on, turn that dollar over, fold it in half, put it in your pocket, and you've doubled your money. This is the wisdom of The Way to Wealth. I suggest everyone read it. Why? If you look around you, we're a country in debt. We're a people in debt. How much of what we buy are things that we really need? And I talked about the soft drink. I don't think anybody really needs a soft drink unless it's somebody with diabetes that's ready to go into shock. Okay? Sugar is deadly. It will kill you. Next, any other questions? Yes?
Quite a few of your friends, what we call the founding fathers, had repercussions by the British on their property and their lives. Did you or your family ever retain any repercussions from the British forces or?
Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, the question was whether there were repercussions for my personal family. When Philadelphia was occupied, my papers were stolen, my house was occupied. Deborah was not a happy camper. Previously, during the upset about the Stamp Act, I was associated with the Stamp Act in some people's mind. When a mob came to our house, Deborah heard about it and got her brothers help and had set up a little small arsenal in the house and defended the house. She was not about to let anyone take that property. Like I say, I give Deborah full credit. She was a wonderful partner. But yes, my property was occupied, my papers were taken, and some of them were later returned to me, for which I am grateful. There were great tragedies during that war on both sides, and certainly a lot of things happen in war. There's no good war, but sometimes war is necessary. Yes?
I think we just have time for
One more. And then I will go outside, and if any of you young people would want to get your picture taken with me, be most happy to. One question, yes?
You also invented the Franklin stove when there was an instrument that you invented?
Yes. The musical instrument was known as a glass harmonica. Now, have you ever seen somebody take a wine glass and wet their finger just a little bit and go around that glass and make a sound? Well, I was paying attention, and I put a bunch of those glasses in a line and had them turning so that they went through the water. You didn't have to stop and wet your finger, and they were tuned, okay? So you just go along and put your finger on there, and you could play notes. As a matter of fact, very famous musicians composed work just for my musical harmonica. And that's all the time that we have. Thank you once again. Thank you. Thank you.